Hey there. Today I'm visiting with Dennis Hoang, who's the chief operating officer of a really interesting business called Pattern. I met Dennis about 2 weeks ago at an entrepreneur panel that I was invited to monitor or moderate, I guess is the right word, at UT Arlington. And I was just telling Dennis just now that while there were a number of really interesting businesses on that panel, his really intrigued me because of, well, the fact, well, you're going to find out more from Dennis in just a second, but his really intrigued me, and I thought it would be fun to chat with Dennis for a minute. So, Dennis, thanks for joining me and taking the time out of your busy day. And why don't you tell everybody what Pattern does and how it got started, what the genesis of the idea is? Just tell us the history of Pattern.
Sure. So the history of pattern. So it actually started with it started with my parents. So back in the early 2000s, my parents essentially opened up a little computer repair shop in a little small town known as Haltom City. It's a part of Fort Worth that most people don't know about, but unless you're from Fort Worth, you probably know about Haltom City. Uh, Essentially what happened was as their business grew, so too did the business problems. And what we found was that my parents' company, it started growing and growing. They eventually started partnering with, large, computer providers like the Dells and the HPs of the world. But one of the problems they had was they never had a software to help them accurately track exactly what they needed to do and also help them track cost. For example, when you're repairing, let's say 10 laptops, each laptop is going to be unique. It's going to have a very different repair. For example, one might have a broken screen, one might have a broken motherboard, and yada, 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 and so forth. Right. So essentially, what my brothers and I did was we took all of the problems that my parents addressed on a daily basis and created a software we describe as Pattern. In terms of the industry as a whole, um, think about this. Big retailers like Amazon and Walmart and the big retailers of the world, they struggle with their customer returns. 30% of products purchased online from like retailers like Amazon are returned. And the majority of the time, these returns are either thrown away or just left collecting dust in a warehouse. Essentially, what we do is we partner with the Amazons of the world and we take in the returns, process it for them, aka do all the repairs and refurbishment and resell it for them.
Well, that just boggles my mind. When you quoted that statistic of 30% of all online purchases end up as a return of some sort, I mean, my head just kind of exploded because that's a huge number. And I know a lot of things can't be resold, but a lot of things can be resold. And so, how much of that? I mean, how much of talk to me a little bit about how you guys figured out how to sell those things, and and I guess you split the revenue that you make with Amazon or whoever. How has that evolved? How has that thinking evolved? And has the share changed over time? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So in terms of, I guess, the selling part, that's the part that is typically the hardest part in this industry. How do you resell this stuff? For us, we sell through a variety of channels, starting with our direct to consumer channels. So we sell on eBay, which is historically known as, the secondhand marketplace, but on Poshmark as well. For example, on eBay this year, we became like a top five seller on eBay in the women's fashion and apparel category. And then on Poshmark, we're one of the only returns tech companies in the world that I know that we're partnered with. And probably because of those two opportunities, that's leveraging our revenue and sales. And that's kind of one of the big, I guess, value props that we provide to the Amazons of the world. We're able to take in their inventory, but also help them make money back. I think that's the most important. That's the most important thing that they're looking for.
So, to kind of recap my understanding here, your folks had a computer store. You developed some software to help them track repairs and returns, how did that grow into the business that it's in now? What are some of the steps, the important steps that that they went through, and how? I mean, did they do some of this, or was this you and your brothers? Because I think you have two brothers that are part of this, right?
Yeah, so I have two brothers that are part of this as well. They're both graduates of UTA as well. My older brother Davis is the product manager, and then my younger brother Doug, he is the software developer. But in terms of, I guess, the development itself, um, I think they played a significant. That's not something I talk about often, but they did play a significant role in it, just because we had developed it originally for. So we developed this return software originally for electronics, but we found that it also works really, really well for fashion, and that's where we pivoted. And then we don't touch nearly as many electronics anymore. We're more focused on fashion.
So, how how did it grow? You had it for your folks, and
Mhm.
how did you branch out beyond your folks? How did you start finding clients? Uh, how did that process work?
Sure. So, it's for our industry. There's two conferences that you can attend to essentially meet the C-level suite executives. So there's a conference known as the Reverse Logistics Association, and another one is known as Consumer Returns Conference. And those two conferences, it happens, at least they happen once a year, and all of your big retailers across the board go there to discuss returns, to discuss return strategies. And it's not your sales folks, it's all of your top level executives. And then on top of that, I have a pretty what I describe as a um, interesting approach. It's a simple. I don't really do a lot of cold calls. Um, I simply I simply reach out to executives on LinkedIn. It's a simple message. Hey, I know it's as simple as, hey, I know you have a problem with your returns, and this is what we do. Is there any opportunities for us? And 95% of the time, they probably say yes.
Okay, so you used industry conferences as a way to grow your network and meet the
Hmm.
people you needed to meet. What are some of the challenges as you were expanding beyond your parents' business? What were some of the challenges that you encountered? Um, just talk about some of those things.
Sure. So one of the challenges that we're facing right now is space. So right now we house roughly 150,000 unique SKUs or unique items. And because of that, we do a lot of what you call single SKU logistics. We're never going to receive 10 of the same product. We're always going to receive one or two max of different products. So because of that, single SKU logistics has been an issue for us. And then number two is just the space. Space, just because um, retailers want to keep throwing stuff, more and more stuff at us. For example, right now we take in and process roughly 2 to 3 truckloads of inventory a week, and that could be anywhere from, let's say, 10 to 15,000 individual units. We just had a meeting with a fairly large retailer. I can't really say the name right now. We had a meeting with a fairly large retailer, and they want to send us 14 truckloads of inventory a week, but we just simply don't have the manpower or the space. We have the technology, but we don't have the manpower or space. And one of the challenges that the industry is facing as a whole is, um, even though returns tech companies similar like us have built some kind of software for the industry, um, it's still a pretty man heavy industry, meaning that you still need a decent amount of personnel to, physically open boxes, inspect, process, add back in inventory, restock, reshelve, and ship out. So it's still a fairly manual process. And there hasn't been a wild amount of innovation on that end.
So, when I think about, I mean, guys, what you described is certainly a logistical challenge. getting all that stuff in, separating it, cataloging it, taking pictures of it if necessary for marketing,
Hmm.
and then putting it up on a platform, whether it's eBay or Poshmark or something else. Do you have APIs built into eBay and Poshmark where you can just put these into your system and it automatically transfers over? Is that something that you've been able to do, or do they not allow that?
Yes. And that's the only way, we conduct our business. So, um, since we since we do a lot of single SKU inventory, we have to use APIs because
Sure.
managing 150 or 100, 150 to 160 unique SKU or
1,000.
150, yeah, 1,000 SKUs without some kind of tech or API, it is a
Right.
nightmare. Right.
So do you also sell direct through your own portal or website?
We do. So we have our direct brand we describe as gender. So gender with a J, so it's Gender, and that is essentially is our eBay or Poshmark store, but on our own website.
So now to me that's real interesting. How are you promoting that, and what percentage of your overall sales currently are coming off of gender versus say a year ago? Is that growing? I would hope that it is.
It is growing, but not nearly as strong as Poshmark or eBay, just because just growing house brands in general just takes time. But the beauty of eBay is that since we became a top seller, the majority of our listings are number one. And then on the Poshmark side, since we're one of the only tech companies in the world that partners with them, the majority of our listings are on I guess on the top as well. But one of the things that we're trying to do this year is have a stronger push for our actual marketplace. So that way we can have stronger ownership of our marketplace and hopefully build new customers and hopefully pivot away from, the eBays and the Poshmarks of the world and being able to actually own the customer and take that in.
Well, and of course you get the margin, whatever the margin is
Oh,
that they take.
of course, right?
You get that, and it's probably what 25 to 45%. So, that is a pretty big incentive right there.
It is, right? And um, that's essentially what we want to do, but we also understand that, just building your own quote unquote house brand marketplace just takes time. It's not gonna launch overnight. But since we've launched it, the revenue's been doubling every year. So we hit six figures the first year, and now we're at a higher six figures this year. So it's been doubling every year. So I think we're on a great trajectory so far.
What about margins and cash flow? Are you happy with how those are working out, or are they,
They,
when a
they
company like yours is growing fast, it can eat your margins and it can eat your cash flow?
Awesome. Our margins are fantastic. The majority of the inventory that we are, so in terms of our recovery rate, we're able to recover roughly 60 to 80% of the original MSRP back. And then after I guess all the fees, shipping fees and wages and just overhead, we're able to net roughly on average 35 to 40% per item sold.
Um, so what is your strategy for taking what is a very labor intensive process and streamlining it? How are you going to get more productivity, per person out of the staff that you have? Have you got any insights into how to do that? I mean, I think that's the big challenge in your industry, right?
Yeah, so there are a couple of solutions that are available on the market right now that we're looking at, but we also like innovating our own stuff in-house too. Um, so for that answer, I don't have a good answer for that just yet.
Still looking for the answer.
It's still a fairly labor intensive process, but we have automated every single piece. We've tried to automate every single piece as close as we can.
So do you I was briefly I did a for sale by Amazon. I was an FBA seller. I started with books and then put some other things up on Amazon, and I would ship them to Amazon, and Amazon
Yeah, they would
would
fulfill it for you.
would do the fulfillment. Now, I haven't heard you mention Amazon in there, so you don't. Are you only selling on eBay and Poshmark, or are you also selling on Amazon, or not?
No, we're not. We're not selling on Amazon. Just because when it comes to resale, it Amazon isn't just Amazon isn't a big fan of that. And when it comes to eBay and Poshmark, they're more friendly towards like companies
Okay,
like that.
okay. So, yeah. Well, so do you do your own fulfillment? So when they sell something, you have to handle the fulfillment as well, or do you send it to them like you would Amazon, and then they do the fulfillment, or does
No,
it work both ways?
so we do all of the fulfillment in-house. So
Okay.
everything from picking to packing to shipping it out to our customer direct, we do everything in-house.
So I think most people are at least somewhat familiar with Amazon's little robots that run around and carry the shelves to the picking stations and all that kind of stuff. Have you gotten that far along yet, or are you still working on
No,
those
not
kinds of things?
yet, not yet, not yet. So to give you some perspective of our size right now, we operate out of two warehouses in Fort Worth with a total of about 70,000 square feet. No robots yet, but maybe when we're $100 million company, we can, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I obviously Amazon has the luxury of having
Yeah,
essentially unlimited funds,
yeah.
but so okay, so talk to me a little bit about the funding side of things. If I remember correctly, so far you've funded this thing entirely out of cash flow, aside from a little bit of initial, capital, which uh, I don't think, from what I remember, wasn't really all that much. Is that correct?
Correct. So, in terms of funding, we received a grant from UTA. So, back in 2019, we were actually part of the pitch competition, and we ended up receiving a total of 50,000. And then on top of that, in 2021, we received a loan from just a small Texas or a local bank, and that's kind of that's what helped us acquire this new warehouse that we're in right now.
Okay. When you said acquire, did you buy the property?
We did, yeah.
Okay.
That's also the type of business that we're in as well. So, a portion of our revenue is dedicated towards honestly, just purchasing shopping centers and holding long term.
Okay. Okay. So, what about funding for the future? What are your plans? I mean, is cash flow a limiting factor on your ability to expand, or are you tossing off so much cash that you're not interested in, like equity financing and things like that? I mean, what is your strategy for the future regarding
Sure. So
funding?
Sure. In terms of funding, I think for now, debt funding is kind of the way that we, I guess, want to keep ownership of the company per se, right? But equity financing won't be out of the picture. But so far, I think we generate enough cash in the business to, take on loans and take on new opportunities. Just because at the end of the day, I think my brothers and I are like aren't want to keep the equity, and we understand that. I think the business opportunity in this industry is huge, so we want to try to keep as much equity as we can. And when we do raise, it has to make sense.
Have you ever, and I'm not trying to push you towards the equity thing,
No,
but I
of
have
course
some
not.
questions here. So, are you familiar with a website called Start Engine?
Uh, no, I'm not.
Okay. Well, you probably are at least familiar to some degree with uh, crowdfunding equity websites. There's places like
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
crowdfunder.com and
yeah, yeah.
equitynet.com.
Mhm.
Startengine.com is one I'm going to direct your attention to, because they specialize in a basically series or Reg A plus financings. Now, you probably know Regulation A under the Securities Exchange Commission deals with public offerings. And there's also under Regulation D, private financing, which is typically private placements that you might place with either venture capital or angel groups or just your own group of people that you might raise. But Regulation A plus is a specialized kind of financing that is equity based, and you can think of it as a non-IPO IPO. You actually can raise, numbers changed on me a few years ago, but I think you can raise between 50 and $75 million doing a public offering to the public without having to meet the normal requirements that the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange might require. It's a much less expensive, and you actually have the flexibility to be able to raise an unlimited amount of money from non-accredited investors. You can advertise on public media, and you can, basically you can do a sort of a small IPO, and Start Engine actually makes a marketplace for you after the fact, so that both you and your investors have a market where they can actually trade their shares. So it's a really interesting option that represents an IPO, raising capital from the public, ability to get liquidity for you and your original investors without necessarily having to give up the kind of percentages that you would have had to do if you were to do a more traditional NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange type of IPO. And it's also much less expensive, and it's much less cumbersome. You might want to spend some time and read all the documentation that they provide on the startengine.com website. I personally think that it's a wonderful tool as an alternative to an IPO to allow you to tap into some of the equity that you've already built without giving the shop away, to be able to get some partial financing and to get some partial, sell off a smaller piece of the equity of your company, but get some significant capital. I mean, $50-75 million of capital is nothing to sneeze at. And, I'm not saying that you could sell off 5 or 10% and get $50 million, but I am saying that the dynamics of how that works is something that when I was listening to you, I thought, here's a company that is extremely well suited for that kind of financing play. So, if you have any questions about it, I'm not by any means an expert. I'm at least a little bit versed in it, but having access to the kinds of capital that 25, 50, $75 million to be able to jumpstart your business to maybe the next level, just something to think about.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's a lot of companies in our space right now that have been raising, honestly, just absurd amounts of money. Like, there's a company known as Trove that does, I wouldn't say a similar thing that we do, but they just raised like 100 million, and then a lot of up and coming returns companies are raising within a range of 5 to 10 million for their first rounds. So it's definitely an interesting space that is kind of being looked into. But I think, in my opinion, there hasn't been a single company that has really like changed the entire landscape. Not yet.
Well, so moving away from that topic over to your biggest concerns, your biggest challenges right now. I think what I gathered from our conversation, that your biggest challenge is really getting the people that you need and getting them trained to do what you need them to do, because people are your constraint, not capital. Is that a fair statement?
I would consider that correct.
Okay. So how are you solving that problem now? And how are you going to solve that problem as you try to scale your company to 2 or 3 or 5 times where it is now? I mean, you had to turn down 14 trucks a week, which, yeah, I know you hated to have to turn that down, because that's pretty significant revenue for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you digest it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you solve the problem so you don't have to turn it down when it happens again in 3 or 6 months or a year? How do you scale that quickly?
Sure. So we want to purchase a new warehouse, but that's still, in my opinion, still a fairly long ways off, and we still have to build it and then get it warehouse ready. Like I don't think that's going to be done for at least a year or two. One of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to, work on, like, one of the things we're trying to do is sell. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone wants to sell more, right? So we're trying to direct more sales through our direct consumer channels, right? We've figured it out for eBay, we figured it out for Poshmark, and now we just want to figure it out for our own house brands, our own individual house brand gender. On top of that, we're actually working on building a wholesale network as well. So think of us as, let's say we have stuff that we can't sell or stuff that we have, just a lot of quantity of. We have a variety of channels as well to where we can wholesale it off too. And on top of that, I briefly mentioned it earlier. One of the things that we're looking into is how do we tap ourselves into the international market, especially on a wholesale side. That's an opportunity that we are currently working on right now. And a pretty cool thing that happened maybe a month ago. There was an individual we currently work with it. We currently work with a. Are you familiar with the term fractional CEO?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, for our specific company, or for our specific, I guess, niche inside the industry that we're in, there's maybe about four companies that do a very similar thing like us. So it turns out the CEO of one of our competitors stepped down, and now we actually work directly with him. And to give you some perspective, he grew his company from maybe about 2 or 3 million all the way up to about 45 to 50 million a year, doing the exact same thing that we did. And now we work with him as he's actually a consultant for us now, and he's been helping us implement a lot of strategies that just stuff that we couldn't even think about, and they're translating to great business for us so far.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. So, what is it that does keep you awake at night? What do you, when you get into that mode where you're worrying about the Chicken Little, the sky's falling down? Not that you ever necessarily do, but we all get caught up sometimes worrying about the threats that are out there, and there's plenty of them, from competitors to regulatory issues and general economic trends and so forth. What are the biggest concerns that you have for your business as you look forward?
Sure. So one of the concerns that we have is, I guess, how much inventory can we take on, right? And how fast can we sell, right? Because if we keep adding and adding and adding inventory, and if we're not selling fast enough, then the problem becomes you just keep buying a new warehouse to adjust for the space, right? But you don't really need a new warehouse if you're selling fast enough. So that's kind of the new mindset that we've been working on nowadays, and that's kind of like what's been, I mean, like, not really keeping me up at night, but like that's kind of the new problem. That's the new bigger problem that we're trying to solve internally.
Okay. So what is it you see? Is this you guys are young, and one of the challenges that I've found most young entrepreneurs have is they have a tendency to think they have to ride the horse that they're on all the way into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question is what do you and your brothers collectively see for the future? Is this something that you want to ride this horse for 3 to 5 years and then sell it and move on and try other things? Or are you looking at this as a longer term thing? I mean, what are your goals for this?
Sure. So to answer your question honestly, we don't have any exit plans as of right now, and I think the returns problem is big enough to ride out for a very, very long time. The opportunity. So to give you a perspective on the opportunity, for example, the total loss on returns this last year was about 815 billion, and the what was returned to brands and retailers was about 65 million. So the opportunity is about 750 billion. So I think that, and I personally believe that returns are here to stay for a long time. As long as there's online sales, and because of COVID, all your big retailers shifted to this online mindset, and the Amazons of the world make it so easy for you to return a product. Um, I don't think returns are going anywhere anytime soon. And I also don't think that there is going to be any groundbreaking returns automation soon and anytime soon as well from what I see. So for us, I think we want to ride this out as long as we can.
How does AI fit into your future?
Sure. So I think, would help us with determining where is the channel that sells the most and most profitable, right? So, for example, we could say this, we could take this water bottle, for example, right? This water bottle might have stronger resale value on eBay versus the Poshmarks of the world. That's how I see AI working with us too. That's one piece I see so far.
So AI would be really a marketing tool to be able to optimize your margins and your speed
Yep.
of turnover and that
Yep,
sort of
yep,
thing.
yep.
So
So it's
AI in the
called
marketing.
yep. So the industry niche term is called dispositioning. So it would essentially help us figure out, once we scan that item, it would help us essentially disposition that product, as in like, hey, it'll tell the AI will tell us, hey, you need to do so and so to this product to get it ready to be sold online.
Okay. What have you learned that you wish you had known that would have made it much easier to get to where you're at now?
Yeah, honestly, it's a little cliche, but I think a lot of people suffer from believing in yourself, just giving it a try. Like, I think that a lot of times, if you don't know how to do something, you often hire someone, or you just kind of left to be. My brothers and I have developed a mindset of trying to be as scrappy as we can, as in, if it's something we don't know, let's try to figure it out ourselves before we just decide to hire someone, or contract someone out to do.
So your title is Chief Operating Officer. Do you, what are the titles you're, I mean, are you basically the chief executive officer on officer on an operational basis, or do you not have one? I mean, kind of
Sure.
how
So
do you
I
share?
guess I yeah, sure. So in terms of my role, honestly, when it comes to my role, I think I've more specialized in the sales, marketing, and operational aspects of the business. But at the end of the day, me and my brothers decided that my older brother Davis has a final say when it comes to decision making. But honestly, when it comes to, I guess, the title of CEO, CTO, COO, I think our company is small enough to where everyone has to wear multiple hats either way. Uh, I just describe myself as a COO, but I mean, I could be the shipping guy one day. I could be the warehouse picker guy this morning. For example, we had we had 1,000 items that we had to process and sell, right? So, because we sold over 1,000 items this weekend, right? So I became the picker today, right? So like, I am the CEO, but everyone at our company wears multiple hats.
So
That's just
you actually still are small enough to where you get in and help out on the floor, fulfilling orders and that kind of stuff. I mean, when you're in a pinch, is that right?
we do, or I do,
Okay.
excuse me.
So how large of a staff do you currently have?
Sure. So we currently employ 20 full-time employees.
Okay, and does that count you and your brothers?
Yes. So
Okay, 17 other than the two of you. Okay, or the three of you. All right. So what do you enjoy doing most?
ooh, okay, that's a good question. In terms of work or for fun?
Well, let's go with work first and then we'll
Okay.
go with fun.
What do I like to do? I like to, I'd say like a lot. We have a lot of ideas that we like to try, and I like to see it fail as fast as I can. So I know that let's try something else. is that I like to, I think the word is I like to fail. That just because in our industry, what happens is all of the knowledge is based on a book that was written maybe in the early 1990s, but it's not really relevant to, how how the returns industry is today. So any strategies, any implementations that we do is strictly from just trial and error. And it's nice that when we try something, we can launch it essentially internally as soon as possible. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, let's try again.
So you like trying new stuff, and if it fails, but you learn a lesson, and if it doesn't, then great, right? So
Great, great,
you like
exactly.
doing new things, challenging new things.
Hmm.
All right, personally, what's your favorite thing uh, out of the office? What do you do in your spare time?
I'm very into fitness. So lately, my brothers and I have been training for a marathon. So we're going to be running the Dallas Marathon here at the begin on December 8th. I I'm not a fan of running in general, but I think I love the results of it, right? And um, I understand that hard things are hard for a reason, and you just have to. It's something you just have to do.
Well, get the running out of your system early while your knees will still not suffer too much.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. There's a lot of I think I think from a fitness perspective, I guess for someone, I guess around my age, it's nice to be able to work towards something, like kind of like work towards the goal, right? Being able to fit, like the mindset that I have right now is trying to be able to finish the marathon, right? But also on the business side, right? There's goals that we have, and try what do we have to do to get from A to B, and what do we have to get, or what can I do to grow the business 1% per day? That's what I always think about.
So this the question about what you enjoy doing outside of work brings me back to how many hours a week on average do you spend working? And this can be home or at work, but if you consider all the hours you spend working on the business, thinking about the business in a other than just like daydreaming about it, but actually working on things, how many hours a week do you spend?
Honestly, no more than 50 hours a week.
Only 50. Okay.
Yeah. Um, in terms of work, I really tried to divvy up doing stuff, doing work that moves the needle, and being really focused on that. So, like it's 50 hours of work, but also, I'm on the mindset. I have the unfortunate mindset that says, doing 70 to 80-hour weeks isn't just is working to live and not living to work. And I'm on a mindset that, hey, I want to fit in family time. Hey, I want to fit in, stuff. I want to fit in stuff that I enjoy outside of work. Right. So there for me, there's a separation of both, just because since it's a family business, work comes home. Right. So either way, I'm gonna be doing work either way. So it's not gonna change.
Gotcha. Are you married? Do you have kids?
I'm not married yet, and I do not have any kids.
Okay. Well, that makes the whole family time easier,
Yeah.
at least from a, demanding
Yeah,
perspective.
100%. Right. And and when eventually I do get married, it's gonna look very different as well.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you taking time to visit with me about your company. I hope, is there anything that that I didn't ask that you'd like to bring up or, tell people?
Yeah, sure. So historically, I have the common question I always hear is like, what advice would you give to people that want to start a business? I historically say, I always tell people start now. Like whatever you want to try, just start now. Like what can you do to move that idea 1% per day? I get that's the same question that UTA students always ask me. I always tell them start now. Like don't wait for the stars to align. Don't wait for anything. Just start now. The sooner you start, the faster you could potentially start the faster you can potentially earn some cash or earn some money.
Nike got the motto, didn't it? Just do it. Just get
Yeah,
out there and just do it.
yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the College of Business, believing in our idea, right, it was as simple as that. I don't think we would be where we are today.
Well, I think it's an amazing story, and I look forward to watching as you grow. And if there's ever anything I can do in the way of questions or anything, reach out to me, give me a call. I'd be glad to, share what little I know. So, thank you,
Thanks, Lee.
Dennis.
I know you're pretty successful to begin with, so I'll definitely be reaching out to
The
you.
invitation's out there. All right,
Thank you,
buddy.
Lee.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Lee.
All right. That's where I will cut. So let me stop
How'd that
recording.
go? I think that went pretty well.
Personally, I thought the flow was